Milton Stewart is a professional certified Enneagram and career coach who works with individual clients and organizations delivering workshops, training sessions, and consulting. Prior to his coaching and consulting practice, Milton worked in education and the banking sector. Milton worked at Hope Works Adult Education, where he helped adult students obtain their high school diplomas. He later worked at Memphis College Prep Elementary School, where he utilized the Enneagram to work with his teaching staff and students in an underserved community. Milton's Enneagram work at Memphis College Prep continues to help scholars feel seen, heard, and understood. Milton feels compelled to mentor youth and to teach the Enneagram to underserved communities in hopes of healing them. Milton is dedicated to helping individuals grow personally and professionally. He is also passionate about helping organizations create healthy cultures. Milton has a BBA in finance from Harding University and a master's in business administration with a focus in leadership and entrepreneurship from Walden University. Milton earned his Enneagram coaching certification under the teachings of Dr. Ginger Lapid-Bogda from Enneagram and Business Network. He received his career coaching certification from the International Association of Professions Career College. Milton also hosts one of the top-ranked Enneagram podcasts called Do It for the Gram, an Enneagram podcast. Please welcome my guest, Milton Stewart.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well.
This is awesome. I am so glad. I am so geeked and excited to have you here today as my guest. You just don't understand.
I'm excited to be here. I'm definitely excited to be here.
Okay. So, I just want to get right into this because what we're going to share today is going to, in my opinion, just really open people up to a new way of understanding themselves and how they relate to others in the world. And I can only speak later on what it has done for me, but with you being a coach and with you teaching this, I'm just excited for you to be able to share this. So first of all, can you tell my listeners and viewers a little bit about your story and how it has led you to where you are today?
Yes, so that's an interesting story, but I would say growing up, I was always interested in personality tests, trying to figure out who am I versus the world, what makes me unique, what makes me different, why certain relationships work, certain relationships don't work, what's going on. I've always tried to figure those out. Even as a little kid, you try to figure some of these things out. But, growing into teens and a little bit 20s, you start to say, oh, what's going on here? And so some of those things were just very fascinating. But one thing I did is I was in college at the time when I found the Enneagram. And what I was doing, I was hanging out with a group of young adults from our church group, and we were having a Devo. So we was kicking it at our young adult minister's house, just chilling back, eating, everything. And a young adult minister came in. He was like, hey, let's do this personality test. So, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's get it.
Right.
I'm down for any personality test. I ain't even heard of this one. Let's get it. So he pulls out this big blue book, which is called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And he's doing these different tests, and we read through it and we give our answers. And he said, cool. So what happened was everybody who chose their answer, what he would do, he would go through the book and read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. Okay. And so the first paragraph is something super positive about yourself. You like, yes, that's me. That's what I'm talking about. But then the next 2 paragraphs talk about all the stuff that other people really don't see about you, or they see that you don't see. And so you feel real uncomfortable. You're like, oh, that is me. But how in the world do they know? Has somebody been following me? And so when that happened, it stuck to me. It clung to me really, really tight, in college. So I got really excited about learning about it. I just became real enthusiastic about it. I knew very little, but I was super enthusiastic because it was one of the first times I think I felt truly seen. And so I was like, whoa, that's different from these other personality tests. I feel seen in this one. Not just oh yeah, that's like me, that's cool. It was no, these are some things you got to work. I was like, oh, okay. But I still was so excited. So I went to college and did my best to try to pass it on to my roommates and all this type of stuff. And they were kind of like, okay, sure. But granted, I didn't know much about it. So I wasn't sharing it in a way that was very, they had a lot of depth to it. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was, yeah. So that was so what are you talking about? I was like, how you get better. And so I was mistyping people and all kinds of stuff. But nevertheless, I continued to grow. And through that process, like I found out things in my life that I needed to work on personally to be a better person. And it just constantly transformed and challenged me, like constantly transformed and challenged me to the point where I ended up going to like what's called an Enneagram. And some of my friends be laughing like, well, you nerd, an Enneagram, what's that? You know, but it was a one day like seminar that they had about the Enneagram. And it was just transformational. And from that point, I said, wow, this is really incredible, something I want to pursue. But at the same time, I didn't know people did stuff with the Enneagram. I was like, okay, cool. It seems cool. I'll use it to help grow and share, but I didn't see the path towards a career. And so a little bit later on, while I'm working in education, which I still do part-time, is I was at the entrepreneur spirit. So I went and sought out a career coach. And through this process, I figured out, I looked at her and I was like, I think I can do what you're doing, you know? And she tried to discourage me. I'm not gonna lie. She was like, nah, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, I think I can. And what I'll do, I'll add the Enneagram instead of like what you're doing, you know? And I was saying it more in a humbling way. This is like, you know, the short version. But so that really intrigued me to be like that, a career coach. So I said, cool, I pursued that. So the next thing I did was I went to an entrepreneur program to help you build your business. Cause I said, I don't know how to build a business. I'm working in this school and I need to learn how to like really figure this out. So in that program, I spoke so much about the Enneagram. They were like, why don't that be your main business? And I was like, people do that. So I went to LinkedIn and started to find all these different people. I started to connect with all these different people who actually taught the Enneagram, and it was like a big part of their business or their main business. And I said, oh my goodness, I think this is what I should do. And so after that, I just got really excited, and I ended up signing up for certification programs to really learn in depth what it was about, because I had seen it not only transform my life, but the people who are like in my inner circle, the people who are close to me, we all were doing it. And I saw all of us transforming, like just getting better, not being stuck in the same, you know, mess we've been stuck in. So I was like, wow, this is some real stuff. And it could be really beneficial to people I know. So from there it came like getting certified. I started a podcast about it, like out of the blue. I was new, didn't know anything. And like, I was just like, but you got to keep going. You just got to keep going and growing. And from there, it's been really good. And I'm going to tell you why, because it is rare, first of all, for people of color to be in the Enneagram space, and especially a Black male. Oh, I am a unicorn in this place.
You are a unicorn. My first episode on my podcast was speaking about mental health in the Black male community. And so wanting to highlight how important that is for our Black brothers to understand more about mental health. So you're right, you are a unicorn.
It's wild. I go to these conferences and different things and I stick out like a sore thumb. But you know, there's opportunity in that though. People are interested, you know. So I use that the best I can when I have the energy to do it, right? Because, you know, it takes a toll every once in a while having to explain all this stuff. But I use it to definitely create an impact in just every community that I've been in and that I like operate in right now.
Yeah. So I was introduced to the Enneagram about 2 months ago. So I'm new. Yeah.
Whoa, 2 months ago. Let's go.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Yes.
2 months ago. And when I tell you, so I like you, grew up wanting to understand myself, number one, because I saw myself kind of, well, I'm about to give you a whole bunch of information about me. So like I said before we talked, I'm wondering if you're going to figure out what I am without actually typing and testing me. But I'm going to give you some information here. So I always saw myself as different and didn't quite fit in, and then couldn't really understand why, because I wanted to, but there was just always just things that I saw things differently, or I just had different perspectives. And so so whenever I had a chance to take a personality test, I'm always taking it, right? Not to get other people, but to get me, because I just couldn't understand me sometimes. And so The more, I guess you would say, popular tests, Myers-Briggs and those types of things, I would take those and I would like, oh, okay, or whatever. Shoot, even my astrological sign, I would go and use that as something to help me understand my personality. And so through all of that, I've always been interested in personal development and just learning about oneself and then how oneself relates to other people in the world. So I am a constant therapy participant because I believe in therapy. I believe in seeking help, on a consistent basis. And so my therapist, introduced this to me 2 months ago. And I was like, I already know what I am. I'm Myers-Briggs, I'm a blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I don't want to give you too much of that information either. I'm going to make you work for this type. And so I said, and she was like, no, try it. And I was like, all right. So I did it. And what's interesting about it is, and it was easy for the one I took was easier for me because it wasn't a lot of questions, and I know there's different ways you can do it, but this one was I read paragraphs.
Yep.
And I had to rank the paragraphs, and so so I read them. I chose my 3, and then I ranked them. Funny thing about it is, I ranked them, and then when we got into talking about it, the one that I had 3rd,
wow,
actually is the one that I am number 1.
Mm.
And so because when she was going through it, and she was just sitting back just because she already knew, right? So she was just sitting back just watching me go through them. And then I came up, I was like, I think I got these mixed up in the order. I said, I think I'm really more of this one now that I think about it. And she was just like, tell me why. And so the interesting piece about it was when I read it, just like you said, it talked about some things about myself that I wasn't ready to hear, but was ready to hear. And then it started kind of like answering a lot of questions about who I am and how I perceive things. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is me. And it was kind of like a freeing. It kind of was like a aha moment. It kind of was like, now I understand. And there isn't just one of me out here, even though I am, whatever. There are more people out there like me who think like this and feel this way about certain things. And so I was just like, man. And so just going more into it, it just opened up a lot for me and it helped me get past some blocks and helped me get past some things that were, in my blind spots that I couldn't see about myself. Right. And so it moved me from a place of like, let's say I was at a 5, I moved to like a 15 or 20 by just understanding and being able to understand what my type was. And so I was like, if that can do that for me, in that short amount of time, what else can it do for me if I learn this, understand it, go through it, develop myself even more? What more, can I accomplish with this? And what else can other people accomplish with this? Do they even know about it? And so just tell us, what is the Enneagram in a sense of like, what kind of personality test is it to where I am over here like, right. And other people who I've introduced it to are also kind of like, whoa, man, that's deep.
So the Enneagram is a deep self-development tool or system. And we give it the name personality test or personality because it's the easiest thing that we all can grasp and be like, I think I understand what it is now. But it's really a really deep, rich, complex system that has a lot of interesting parts to it, which help people to not only identify like with themselves, but it helps them identify with how they behave, why their emotions do what they do, why they think the way they think. So it talks about how we're wired internally. And we're talking about the motivations inside of you, not just what you do, but why do you do what you do?
I think that's the piece right there. It's that why. It's that why piece. I think that is what, to me, the Enneagram helps explain.
Yeah. And that part, understanding the why, helps us to actually identify it, deal with it, and maybe change it if we want to. Right. And so a lot of times other personality tests, they kind of leave us there. It's like, oh, this is you, boom, stop. That's it. But the Enneagram, it shows you like not only like what you do, but it's like why you do what you do. So now you have a
Mm-hmm.
chance to change what you do. Now you have a chance to mend relationships, fix different things in yourself to be
Yes.
better with yourself first and foremost, and then better in relation to other
With
people.
others. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the biggest piece of it, is that it talks about the why and the motivations of it. And so, how many types are there in an Enneagram?
All right. So the Enneagram, which it is 9 types, and each of the 9 types all have what's called, and this is going to be a little bit more complex than most people if you've never heard of it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to put it out there anyway because people need to know if they're going into it. It's what they call subtypes, and each 9 type has a different subtype, has 3 different subtypes, and basically what that means is that each type, which is 9 types, they have a core issue, a core something that they felt when they were growing up, or something that happened that was missing. So they try to fill their void with whatever they believe that to be. And so each subtype responds to that core issue a little bit of a different way. They all still have the same core issue, but they respond to it differently.
Okay. All right. So they respond to it differently. And so can your Enneagram type change? So, I mean, like for instance, for me, I read those
Hmm.
paragraphs, right? And I truly believed that I was all three, which, the instructions were that you may see yourself in all of them, but which ones really resonate, and, pick 3 that resonate and then rank them. So I saw myself in all 3 of them. But I ranked them.
Hmm.
I didn't rank them in the right order.
Right.
So how, I mean, so can Enneagrams change for you, or is it that you were born with one that's really, the core, and then you have others? How does that work?
So you do not change Enneagram numbers. You do not change Enneagram numbers, and you only have one number. Here's the interesting part about the Enneagram, though. It is dynamic and not static.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the personality tests are typically static, where this is you and this is you for the rest of your life. The Enneagram is actually what it's doing. It's showing you the box you've been in your whole life, that you've been trapped in. And by box, I mean patterns that you've been doing your whole life that unfortunately are unconscious to you a lot of times until somebody
Yeah.
brings it to your awareness. And or if they do, you may be like, no, I'm not like that. I'm like this. So what it helps us to do is actually try to unravel that box. So now we have more conscious control of what we do, what we say, how we behave in different situations. And so it gives us, like, interesting enough, it gives us more control of who we authentically are,
Hmm.
and helps us to like defeat that. So you have one type, but you do have traits of every type. There's beauty in every one, and there's something we can learn from every single type that we may need to attribute to ourselves.
I definitely agree with you on that. And I think that's what happened to me, is that when I ranked them, and I said I ranked the one that I truly am last, I think it was because I just was not ready to accept what that type said about me. But when I think about it, and I'm like, when I want to show up authentically, I want to be authentic. And I'm like, that right there is who I am. And, and getting more into it, I started to see the beauty in it. I started to
Hmm.
see the beauty in my type. Now, of course, I was like, the negative parts. I'm like, oh man,
I know, right?
dang. I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh man. I'm like, yeah, is that me? Dang, that is me. Got to work
Hmm.
on that. Want to work
Yeah.
on that. And so, but it helped me understand more about myself. Like I said, the parts that were blind to me, and then really appreciate it. And I found it very, very beautiful. And like I said, freeing, because I do believe truth, authenticity is a beautiful thing, no matter how, you stumble upon it. So yeah, I think so. It's interesting to know that you don't change from your Enneagram type, but that it is, like you said, it's dynamic, and
Mhm.
so you can learn to grow from it. And from what I understand too, it talks about how you show up in your Enneagram when you're healthy and you're not healthy. Talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit.
So this is the beauty of it. You know how sometimes our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness?
Oh, talk about it.
Right. This is exactly the same way for each number. Each number has its like upper side and has its lower side. And so the upper side is when we are in our type, but it's not controlling us, but we're using the very best parts of ourselves and it's integrated authentically with who we are. The lower side is when we're not using it in a way that's actually beneficial for us or the people around us necessarily. In a way that's authentically healthy for us internally, not necessarily like
Sure.
the tricky part is some numbers you may advance in society, but actually be harmful to yourself and other people, you know?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
and so there's different side. There's the upper side and the lower side, and we gravitate through them daily. Like it's not like
Sure.
we stay in one side all the time. It's like we have moments where we dip down, like hold up, that ain't right. Let me. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Do you think a person can be, okay, so we have a core type,
true.
but can a person show up and work as one type, at home as one type, in
Yes.
relationships as another type?
So usually what happens is types show up differently under stress and security. And so
Mm,
we don't change or morph our core issue, but we may look differently in our behavior outwardly. So
okay.
if people who are watching you look up Enneagram, you're like, what the world is that? And you see all these lines. No, it's not a Ouija board or anything weird like that. But these lines actually give us information of the numbers we're connected to on these arrows actually allow us to understand different places that we slide to more easily. Our
Okay.
personality behaviors, like, and these are our external behaviors more than necessarily like the other numbers. So for me, as a seven, I'll say my number is a seven. I have an arrow to the five and the one, and they are the most disciplined numbers, and they're the most inward numbers and organized numbers. That is not naturally my thing. But in certain situations, when I have to go there and I'm focused and need to go there, I can. I can more easily go there. Let me say that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, since you went ahead and just told yours, I feel like I'm compelled now to tell mine.
hmm
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you
hmm
tell me if you shocked when I tell you.
Go ahead.
I'm a four.
Oh, I knew. Listen, I knew you were in the hard triad, first of all. I said, she's in the hard triad. I said, there's no doubt. I said, there's no doubt. And then I look at the background and I see the distinct, like, it's so artistic and creative, right? Like, I'm just looking, I'm like,
Mhm, mhm,
I
mhm.
said, okay, okay.
Okay, yeah.
hmm
I'm a four. And so I can't describe the four with enough justice. So can you describe a little bit about what the four, and then so I'll tell you this. So when I did my test, I
Right.
picked um I picked
Yep.
3, and 4.
Yeah. That, it makes a lot of sense. And do you know your subtype yet?
Working on that right now. So we're working through that right now.
Okay. I don't know you just super personally just yet,
Sure.
but you may lead with self-preservation
Mm-hmm.
as a four. And the reason being because a lot of times whatever's going on internally inside is not always accepted by people outside of you. So it makes total
Yep.
sense. For the four has a deep well of emotions on the inside that a lot of people may not understand or see or feel. And so they experience life at such um, a strong gravity of emotions. It can be like in a roller coaster sometimes of
Mm-hmm.
emotion. So them trying to balance it. And what I want people to understand is like we're talking about in your body sensations, not just feelings like emotions in your chest. We're talking in your body sensations that are powerful. And so fours actually have some of the most powerful ones naturally that they naturally have to work with, manage, deal with.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They usually are really good. They usually are really creative in some type of way. It's not usually necessarily art necessarily, but it is
Yeah.
some way creativity comes out. So they understand and feel emotions very, very deeply. They can sense emotions in other people very well. They know these things
Mm-hmm.
very well. They also can always see what's missing. Sometimes they feel like something's missing from themselves, but in rooms, they know what's missing. Go ahead. Go ahead. I saw you.
So that piece right there. So when we
Yes.
talk about things that have always plagued me, It has been that what's missing piece, because I can get tripped up and caught up on what's missing. And what that can do for me is it can make me not recognize and appreciate what I have in front of me and what is presently there. You know what I mean? Right. So in one sense, like you said, your greatest, strength can be your weakness. So therefore, I'm well at seeing things that are missing and being able to point them out and saying, hey, this is what we need to add into it, or blah, blah, blah. But it's also in an unhealthy place, and not being mindful can really, take me away from what I have in front of me, and I'm not able to really appreciate. And so it can start kind of finding things that are missing, if you know what I'm saying.
And that's and that's one of the gifts. I think fours, one thing I experience from fours is that they have an appreciation when they are in their healthier side of like the smallest, most beautiful things that we all look over and graze over, especially me as a 7. Oh my goodness. Like they have the ability to savor life, to savor experience, to savor things, to really be present with something that's really amazing, or just simple that's amazing. Where a lot of types, like we graze over them, we have moments, but the 4 can really stay there. And like you said, greatest strength and greatest weakness, where they can super appreciate certain things, and then they can get to a point where it's like they're not really appreciating the beauty at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is definitely a piece that I was happy to find out about my type, because that is something that has kind of, like I said, just irritated me and plagued me in certain situations, relationships, jobs, certain things of where I just didn't really, appreciate the beauty, and was a little bit too focused on what was not there. And so I'm very more mindful now of when I'm starting to be like, no, this doesn't have four.
Right.
Take a look at it. It may not be what you wanted and thought it was going to look like.
Right.
But what about it is beautiful? And so now I'm seeing myself being able to really look at things in a completely different way. And what I like about it is that, like I said, at first, when I first saw it, I kind of was a little bit jaded, and because I was like, oh man, 4 emotional, even though I know that I am. Even though I know that I am, I try to turn it off, but when I do, I'm not who I am. And so, and the piece about the melancholy. Now, the melancholy piece.
Tell me about it.
So my partner, right? When I read this one off to him, he was like, "Yeah, that's you." He was like, "Yeah, that's you." And I told you that was you. And I'm like, "Yeah, but you told it, you said it in a different way. I understand it in this way." Right. So because he has always mentioned to me that I can be in sad moments, or I'm comfortable in sadness. Right. And meaning that sadness doesn't over consume me. I don't get, overly depressed, or I don't get, I don't become immobile with sadness, but like sometimes I can seek sadness, and I can be in sadness, and I can see beauty in sadness, because for me, I see where, for me, you don't grow when you're comfortable. You don't grow when everything is shiny and bright and sunny. It's those times when things are hard, and you're facing adversity, and when you are sad, that for me and my personal experience, that I have grown the most. I have found the most, joy. I have found so many things. So sadness, to me, I have a capacity to be in sadness and not let it over, consume me. Whereas other people want to be happy all the time. I can be there in that sad place a little bit. But not a lot of people, can be there. So sometimes it feels lonely.
Yeah, and the issue, like the 4s are so unique, and I'm always glad when a 4 is able to understand their type structure, because a lot of times they do feel so different from other people. A lot of times just growing up, and a lot of times it's not a lot of people who help them make sense of it, right? Yeah. So they're just like out here on the island, like, what in the world is going on? Like I just feel so different and everything, because. And on top of that, you mentioned like how our society has taught us that somehow being happy-go-lucky all the time is supposed to be like it equals good, and sad equals bad, which is totally not true. That's why I love the movie Inside Out. Oh gosh, I love it. Oh, I love that movie. Um, because it kind of teaches us that like we need all the whole full array of emotions to really
Absolutely.
embrace and understand life. And sadness is a part of it. And sadness doesn't equal bad. That's a place that a lot of us need to go way more frequently,
Yes.
because there's things we need to deal with in there.
Mm-hmm,
For the
mm-hmm.
fours, they have to make sure they don't get stuck there. But
Correct.
everyone else, we need to go there a little bit more often, if we are stuck in happy-go-lucky mode.
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
helps us to kind of pull through things. And obviously, like you said, mental health, like get you a therapist, find, like that's going to be a great way to get you somebody to help
Mm-hmm.
pull you through some of those things, because
Yes.
that's how we deal with them and get over them and heal. It's important.
Yes, yes, yes. That healing piece, I've even seen in myself just certain situations that I've had in my life where I could have looked at them in completely different ways and perspectives, but because of the things that I have been taught, because of the things that I practice, I'm able to look at them with a completely different mindset than what others may look at them as, and so it's just very interesting. But that melancholy piece at first threw me for a loop because I was like, I'm not a sad person. I don't walk around being sad. Like, I'm like, do you think I'm sad?
And there's like, well, you kind of look, but yeah.
And so I had to really go and do some work in that and understand what that really truly meant. And so I understanding that I have a capacity to be in that place, more so easily than others.
Right.
That is what it meant.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's my type, and so yeah, working through all of those, and so in talking about it, is one type better than another? Is one type better than another in a particular, setting or job, careers, or what?
So things are easier for different types depending on what your strength is, or that becomes natural. But what I find more interesting is the numbers that usually do not necessarily gravitate towards being great, in a certain position. Actually, when they get there, they're actually a little bit better than the people who are naturally there. For instance, there's a number on the Enneagram. There's 3s, 7s, and 8s, and they all are what's called the more assertive or aggressive types, in the sense that in order to get what they want in life, they try to go against people. If they can't get it the regular way, part of them will try to go against people or the rules or the structure to get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times these people have leadership positions, and they don't always need them because they hadn't had to actually be humble, understand how to really help people, actually bring along different tools and techniques that would be great for everybody, because it's been about them, right?
Oh, okay.
And
I
so
see.
when you do have a person who's not naturally like that, who may be a 9, 4, 5, 1, 6, these other numbers, they tend to be, when they work on themselves, like in the upper side, they are great leaders because they don't have a natural tendency to always want to like supersede people with their ego. And so
Yeah.
I find that like, even though some of us naturally are attuned to doing different things really well, that all numbers, when you work on something really well,
Mm-hmm.
that you're pretty doggone good at it. Like you're pretty doggone good at it. But there are some places, like you said, that we shine. That it's just
Yeah.
a different area where like we're gonna shine naturally.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like you mentioned. You said you knew that I was in the heart.
Oh yeah.
And so what was it about me that made you think that?
So
And well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
no, go
interrupt
ahead.
you. I'm so
No,
sorry.
it's all good. Go.
Actually, can you even just tell my viewers what the three areas are so they'll understand why you're talking about the
Yes.
heart?
Oh yeah. So there's what they call three centers of intelligence, and there's head, heart, and body.
Hmm.
And so the head is like more logical thinking, and they perceive the world through that primarily first. The heart centers, which they perceive the world through their heart or emotions first, in relationships as well. And then also you have the body types, somatics, who receive the earth through intuition more, the feeling of understanding those things. So those are kind of the different types. Now we all have all three, but it's just one that's more dominant inside of us,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So for the four, the reason I was like, she's in the heart type. I said, let me see. So my thought was, First of all, image for the heart type is very important, and they look good. Like I'm telling you, image types in 2, 3s, and 4s. Like everybody wants to look good, right? But like 2, 3s, and 4s look sharp when they're like presenting. It is a sharpness to them, and I was like, yes. I was like, her appearance is on point. Yes, there's something here. Like she's definitely in the heart type. That is like very important. And then the aesthetics, even of your background, aesthetics of everything. I said, yeah, that is heart type. These things are correct. And then, so there, and this comes with teaching and learning. There's the cadence in which you speak. There is the level of your voice, the way that you speak, the sound, like all of that gives me like tones to be like, okay, this is most likely a heart type based on the tones and the words they use. And that's what's so amazing when I type people in Enneagram typing interviews. I pick up on all these things. It's not just, it's not just like, I'm listening to your words, because we can say anything. That doesn't mean anything. But right. I pick up on your energy. I pick up on the words you say. I pick on how you say your words, right? The frequency of your words. And it really helps me to understand like what's your type.
Sure. And so, and going into that, that's why, when my therapist gave me those and I came back with them, and she was just sitting there looking at it like, girl, I done talked to you for a couple of sessions. I know, right. These two are not, this is not who you are. Like you're more of the 4, and just so her to work with me and for me to come up with that understanding and being like, you know what, I think I got this wrong. I'm a 4. So like you said, it's because she was able to listen to me. She was able to basically use all her 5 senses, right? So she was able to watch me, listen to me, how I talk, my mannerisms, different things like that, to be able to really understand and know that, at first I was just mistyping myself and just not really wanting to accept that piece of the 4 that I, at the time, felt was not good. I judged it. I judged it because I wasn't ready to accept myself as a 4. But yet have felt that way my whole entire life. So it was one of those weird types of things. So, so if people want to learn more about the Enneagram and they want to, find out their type, what is the best way? Because there's different things out there. There's internet tests, there's tests that, there was one test that my friend, she was like, it was 96 questions. I'm like, by the time I'm done with that, I'm like, I could be anything. I'm like, I can't do
just like clicking stuff. I'm like, you know what? I just got to get done.
Yeah. I'm like, I could be anything. But if people wanted to type themselves, what is the best, test that they can take that will, basically keep them engaged to it,
right?
So they can get a more accurate result.
So there is, it's not a complex answer, but there is one test that's mediocre, which is it's called eclecticenergies.net, I believe. And they actually have a good free online test. And then you also can Google 2-question Enneagram test, and it has 3 different options. So you end up with 9 different possibilities, right? And it has you rank them. Those are 2 free ways to keep you engaged. The best way is to actually find an Enneagram teacher and actually do an Enneagram typing interview. Those reveal a lot of different things. They tell you about the type. They hit the points where you speak, and then they connect it to exactly your type, and it makes sense. So I do Enneagram typing interviews, and like to this day, and I hope this stays, I literally, every person that I have like worked with that has got a typing interview, we found their type every time. Wow. And it's always like, not overwhelming, but some of it is overwhelming, but like a just amazing feeling of feeling seen, feeling heard, like, oh, this is me. Oh my goodness. I keep speaking like, oh my, yes, this is. And so these moments are like breakthrough moments, and because they help us to really identify and see ourselves, because sometimes we just don't have an accurate picture, and most of us think we're more aware than we actually are. That's just how it works. But there's so much beauty in it when you're able to see more of your authentic self, and it helps you make sense of like basically your whole life. You're like, oh, that's why I did that. That's why I did that. That's why the relationship didn't work. Oh my goodness. Like, it's all these things, because it literally impacts every component of your life.
Yeah, you're right. It really does. And I think that's the piece that for people, like this is not just a test that will help you at work. This is not just a test that will help you in relationships. It will help you in all areas of your life, your personal, your relationships, and your work. And, and if you're wanting to understand yourself, if you're wanting to understand why you think the way you think, why you relate the way you relate, this test here, excuse me, will give you a lot of information. And not only give you the information, but then also give you information on how you can improve and grow if you so choose.
Correct. And I think that's the most powerful part about it. It provides really a growth path for you. Like there's a growth path for every single number and the subtype of the number. It is a specific strong growth path. I mean, we all have interesting little different things we do up in there, but like it's a
Sure.
growth path. Like it helps you to know, oh, this is how I get better. Okay, let me just work
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what other type of work are you doing with the Enneagram?
So, man, that's a great question. Oh my goodness, that's segue perfectly. I was already thinking about something like that. But anyway, so here's part of it. So I've worked with Fortune 100 companies, from working with diversity and inclusion because they had a problem with, actually, the glass ceiling for Black and Indigenous people. They were having a huge. They had no pipeline of people getting to the senior level, and we brought in people of color from their organization, and we brought in some of their executives, and executives all white except one Black guy. And then all of the proteges we brought in were people of color, Black people who've been crushing it. Not just people they just choose from the company. Like, people been crushing it for multiple, like 10, 15 years and had not been able to even get an interview for senior spots. So what we did, we created a protege program, and we used the Enneagram to actually help them understand not only the glass ceiling that existed, but actually how these people in the company were actually feeling and the impact it was having on the company. So I'm talking about, first of all, I'm the poorest person in the room, by the way. Like, so I'm like these executives, I'm talking about like they got helicopters and stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And we got them in
Wow.
there working with these executives and these proteges together, crying because now they understand the gravity of just how much systemic racism, systemic oppression,
Yeah.
systemic issues just infiltrate into all different places. Even if you're not aware and you're not trying to be a part of it, it's just enriched. That's one area I work with it at. I work with it at the school level. I think teachers are definitely like the most important people that we have in this planet.
I agree.
And so actually helping them to better work with other coworkers and our kids is paramount for me. It is so important. So I love to do that work. I've worked with Social Security administrations, which is really interesting working with their teams. I've worked with church groups. Like I've done the whole gambit of working with like individuals, and some of the areas that I'm working with too, which the Enneagram works in. I'm not necessarily working there right now, but
Hmm.
even the Enneagram, they call it the Enneagram Prison Project, and they're actually
Oh,
working to
wow.
help men and help people who are in prison because they're not doing any rehabilitation, unfortunately, in most of these
Sure.
prisons.
Yeah,
So they're trying to
unfortunately.
rehabilitate them and help them to actually grow, learn, love, and like redeem themselves. So it's used. I use it in a whole lot of places. It's not a place I don't use it and I don't see it. Like, to
Yeah.
be honest with you, it's not a
Yeah.
place.
That's awesome. So, what are some, so those are some of the projects you're working on right now?
Hmm.
So, are there some things that you're wanting to see the Enneagram? Like, how do you want the Enneagram to be perceived, basically? Do you
Hmm.
want, are you looking at it as something that should be taught like in, high school as a curriculum? I mean, how do you want it to be perceived? Because again, like I said, it's hard to share it with people. It's
Hmm.
hard to share it with people and for them to get it. What are your goals and aspirations for the Enneagram?
Ooh, that's a big one. I have a lot of dreams and goals. If anybody finds out about the seven who's listening, you'll see that I do nothing but dream and have goals. But anyway, um, so
I kind of knew that.
yeah, I know. So my dreams lie with the Enneagram. First and foremost, I want to make sure I use the strengths in the area that I'm in to make sure I'm very effective. So when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am so like strong in that area. And being a Black male, obviously it's rare in the Enneagram space. So I'm going to use my voice and my understanding of the Enneagram to help organizations really try to like try to undo a lot of the systemic issues that we have. That's going to be one of the first places. Another place is really spreading it to more people in a way that is understandable and
Yeah.
practical, because there's a lot of it, and some of the teachers are a little bit like, they teach way up here, and it's
Sure.
like, what are they talking about? And or the way that they teach is maybe not practical enough, and or they may not be able to communicate to people of color, because there's not that
Mm-hmm.
many of us in this field just yet. We're growing, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, we
Mm-hmm.
got people rolling, it's got many people, which is great, but it's not that many of us. So I want that to be the last thing I'm talking about, which is not the last thing I'm doing, but the last thing I want to say is, like, in communities of color, oh my goodness, in marginalized communities, it has to be spread, because it is one of the low barrier entries to actually having some type of mental health, emotional
Right.
health. You talk about physical health, and then the next level of it is spiritual level. Like, it's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother level of, like, transformation, and it doesn't matter what religion you are with. There's a whole nother component to it that actually transforms us, and, like, so we can live just a much better life. So my aspirations is to
Absolutely.
spread this thing like fire, starting with breaking down systems and, like, building unity to them, and then bringing unity to, like, the Black community and healing in a way that helps, anyone who finds out about it, who has the knowledge.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. That's a beautiful message. And so you talked about yourself as a type 7. So for those who don't know the types, and we just introduced what a type 4 is, and now let's talk about a type 7. Who are you?
Ooh. So, type 7, who am I? So it's the sevenness operates inside of me. It's a deeper side of me that I have to work on. So sevens are generally extremely optimistic. They have the ability to turn any bad situation to something positive. They rationalize, like, it's so natural for them to rationalize. They have more ideas than you can imagine within a day. They may look like they have ADHD, to be completely honest.
Mm,
They're usually good at.
I will
Go
say
ahead.
that's why I mistyped myself. I mistyped
Mm,
myself as a 7 because at the time I was taking the test, I had all these ideas and different things that I was
right.
wanting to do and blah, 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 blah. And so that's where I thought I was. But of course, we know I'm a 4. So I digress. Keep going.
So it is that combination of
Yeah,
idealization. Like, we think almost like, they compare it sometimes, unfortunately, to, like, Peter Pan, like, not very grounded, but tons of ideas, always out there
sure.
trying to the next best idea. What's the next best great thing I can do? Oh my goodness, something failed. Oh, I can do the next thing. It's always great. It's always sunnier. You know what I'm saying? Somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else, and they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
get there. They're future oriented. But here's the thing about them, and the reason why their personality is set up that way. They're trying to avoid uncomfortable emotions, feelings, and pain. That's what's
Mm.
happening. So that is a part of my core that I have to deal with. And because of my work, I've dealt with it quite a bit, and I'm able to be more
Sure.
vulnerable in front of people, and to myself. Forget just other people, to myself. I got to be honest. That's the first place you got to
Hey,
be
be true
honest
to
with.
thyself. Be true to
Oh, oh
thyself.
my goodness. So, that is a big part of the 7. That's a very small part, to be honest, for people, but I'm just trying to give them a tidbit so they'll know, like,
Sure.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. That's why you do what you do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
I love it. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day about the
Yes, sir.
Enneagram, but I don't want to take up all your time. And I'm so grateful and thankful that you took the time today to talk with us about the Enneagram. So, for those of the listeners and viewers, if they want to learn more about the Enneagram or if they want to follow you to see what you're doing, where can they find you?
Yes, Do It for the Gram podcast. And on Instagram, it's at Do It for the Gram podcast. And that's Do It for the Gram podcast. And you also see on here, if they're watching and not just listening, kaizencareers.com. That
Mm-hmm.
is the professional business side of what I do. And those are the places you can find me. And I'm on LinkedIn. So if you see my name, Milton Stewart, you can find me there. Not hard to reach. I try to communicate with, like, I'm growing in this space, and I'm growing pretty quick. I'm not going to lie, but I
Yeah.
try to be available for people who really are like, hey, I got a real question. I'm like,
Sure.
let's get into it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, you do coaching too, right?
yes, I do coaching as well, Enneagram coaching, and it's based on, if you would think of life coaching, but think of it
Mm-hmm.
specifically really like interwoven with who you deeply are and how
Mm-hmm.
that affects every single thing in your life. I help you work through all those things and whatever specific one you may need.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
All right.